So it was just last month. I was visiting with a local farmer out on Long Island. His name is Lyle. This is him. And Lyle grows zucchini. And at some point during the conversation, I asked him how he closed out last year, if it was a good year for him. And I was surprised when he told me no. In fact, he lost money last year. He lost $60,000. Now, pause on that for a second and just think about it. Imagine working an entire year as hard as you can and not getting a single paycheck. And then at the end of that year, having to come up with $60,000 in cash just to stay afloat. That's what happened to Lyle. And the irony is, the reason this happened is because Lyle's a good farmer who doesn't take shortcuts and grows responsibly and turns out vegetables that taste the way that they're supposed to. The problem is, it cost a little bit more to do that. And when it came time for him to harvest his crop, he couldn't get the little, and I mean little, premium that he needed to cover his cost. Now, the sad part in this, the really sad part in this story, is that Lyle had to sell off the rights to some of his land. Land that had been in his family for 13 generations to cover that loss. Now, there is a fundamental flaw in the way that we think about and value food in this country. If guys like Lyle that are doing the right thing can't even sustain their own farm. Now, before I go off and rant, let me tell you who I am and why I'm here. I'm a retailer, specifically an online food retailer, with a company called Fresh Direct. And my role is kind of unique because I don't spend my time in an office or a boardroom. I spend it traveling around the country, sometimes even the world, working with some of the most interesting and inspiring true food experts that I ever met. Farmers and ranchers and fishermen, the people that are catching and growing the food that we eat. And I spend real time with them on their land and on their boats, really trying to learn how they do what they do, understanding what their challenges are. But most importantly, I'm building a relationship with them, a relationship that's built on trust and transparency. And I want to share some of the insights that I've had in the field with you, insights that I believe can help change the way we eat by simply changing the way we value fresh food today. And I want to start in the produce industry, because today's produce farmers, they're growing strong fruit. Fruit that can withstand thousands of miles of travel, yet still look great by the time it makes it onto the supermarket shelf. The problem is, to gain that durability and strength, we're breeding out and sacrificing the flavor and the taste. And if these farmers, I want to pick on something that I call the super strawberry. If these farmers would just take that strawberry and ripen it a little bit more before they cut it off the stem, it could be 10 times better. But they can't. That's what they should look like, but they can't. And the reason they can't is because that little strawberry has a really tough road to travel. You see, from the time it's picked, it's cut, and I've done this trip, from the time it's cut off the plant, it gets whisked inside to get cooled down as quickly as possible. And then eventually it makes it on a truck, on a big truck, that's going to take it across the country, where it ends up in a distribution center. And from the distribution center, eventually it's going to make it into a store, onto the shelf. You guys are going to buy it, and you're going to get it home. And that strawberry is still going to look great, and you're going to expect it to last for another 4 or 5 days. That's a super strawberry. But the problem is, let's be honest, they kind of suck. They don't taste good. They don't taste good. And I'm picking on the strawberry, but it's not just strawberries. It's mangoes and melons and peaches and plums and nectarines. It's almost all fruit that's being picked before it's prime because it's easier for us to handle. And I'm not sure that this strategy is working, if you think about the health of our country. Because people, if they don't like that fruit, they're going to eat other things. They're going to eat processed foods that are full of fat and sugar and salt, foods that are practically engineered to be cracked for the taste buds. And it's hurting. If you look at some of the statistics, but with the diabetes and the obesity and the sodium, and we're still not eating the fruits and vegetables that we should. So then the question is why? Why are farmers doing this? Why are farmers growing food that doesn't taste great? Well, it's not their decision. all they're doing is listening to their customer. And their customer isn't who you think. The customer isn't you, the eater, that's actually eating the food. The customer of the farmer is me. It's the retailers, the supermarkets. And the real mind bender on this one is that the priorities of the supermarket are completely different than your priorities. You see, a typical produce buyer cares about three things. He wants a piece of fruit that's going to look great, that's going to last a really long time, and it better have a great price. But things like flavor and taste, they don't come up. They do not come up in the conversations, and that's the complete opposite of what you want, the eater. You want a piece of fruit that actually tastes great. And yeah, price is important. But look at the farmers markets and CSAs and co-ops. We've proven that people are willing to pay a little bit more for something that they can actually enjoy eating. We've got to get farmers to grow food that's good for you, not what's best for the supermarket. And the good news is it's happening. I'm meeting more and more farmers that are thinking about flavor and taste and less about what it looks like or how long it's going to last, like this woman. Her name is Diana Russell, and she grows melons out in California, or actually Arizona. And they're terrific. And I actually went out and visited her to learn how she did it. And her strategy is actually really simple. You see, they start with seeds and varieties that are bred for flavor, not what they look like or how long they last. And then she plants them and lets them go and lets them grow. But the real difference is in how she harvests them. She calls it the forgotten art of harvesting flavorful fruit. You see, a typical melon grower will plant a field of melons and let them grow. And when they're ready, he'll go out into the field and harvest them, all of them, whether they're ripe or not, because that's the cheapest and most economical way to do it, at the sacrifice of flavor. But Diana's different. Every morning, she goes out, she wades out into the field with her team and her very large knife, and she starts whacking them and cutting it open and tasting them. And when she finds a patch that she likes that's ripe, she'll harvest that patch, and she'll let the other one sit for another day. Something else that she told me that's interesting. She believes that the sugar content in a melon goes up and down throughout the day based on the temperature. The hotter the temperature, the higher the sugar level. Lower the temperature, the less the sugar. So rather than harvest at 5 in the morning when it's coolest out and most comfortable, she's out there at noon. The day that I was there, it was 98 degrees, and she told me that that was cool. And the only reason that she can do this is because she's in the field with her team. Every other melon grower in California contracts out the harvesting, but not her. She runs her own team. And she's in the field with her team, so she can make sure that there's cold water and shade blocks and that people can take breaks because she's right next to them. And that's what makes her special. And there are others. There's a million stories. I could tell you stories about Eberhard Mueller. You guys remember him? He was a 4-star chef in Manhattan who woke up one day and suddenly decided that being a 4-star chef in Manhattan just wasn't challenging enough. So he quit and became a local farmer. And he's killing it, and he's turning out fantastic vegetables right here on Long Island. Or Sandy Lewis, who is a banker. Actually, he told me, he's an arbitrageur, or was an arbitrageur, and now he's a cattle farmer, upstate New York, 6 hours from here. People call him the cow whisperer. They do. And he's growing the only certified organic grass-fed beef in the country. Or guys like this guy, Scott Blake, who's a salmon fisherman in Alaska, who knows the Copper River better than the back of his hand. And he was so upset with the way that his fish was getting handled in transportation once it left Alaska, he opened up his own company called Copper River Seafoods. And he figured out how to get us the freshest wild salmon 18 hours after it left the water. Look, there's a ton more, but you get the point. There are some amazing farmers out there now that are growing really high quality food responsibly, but you don't know them. And how could you? They're not food celebrities. They don't have shows on the Food Network, but they should. These are the people that should be inspiring us about food, not the guy whose claim to fame is eating the biggest burrito in the world. Yeah, nice, yeah. So look, here's what I want to do. I want to disrupt this food system. I actually call it Project Disruption, where we're going to press the other retailers to take a higher standard and get behind the farmers. But I can't do it alone. We need to do it together. And there's a role that you guys can play. Because as long as you continue to buy those giant tasteless strawberries, there's no incentive for anybody to change their ways. Those guys actually think the strawberries are good. But we have to prove a point. So here's what I want you to do. The next time you go to the supermarket and you buy some fruit and you take it home and you cut it open and you eat it and it's disappointing because it doesn't taste good, what do? Bring it back. Return it to the store. Just like you would return a sweater or something else, bring it back and say, I don't like the way it tastes. And enough people did that, the supermarkets and retailers would get the point that, hey, we have to actually step up our standards. But nice, yeah. But understand, the way I see it, the real responsibility here lies on me and every other retailer that sells food for a living. We, the retailers of this country, need to stand up and accept at least partial responsibility for this food mess that we've gotten ourselves into. This isn't the farmers' fault. We're the ones that are pushing the farmers to take the shortcuts, to pick the fruit before it's ripe because it's easier for us to handle it, to grow the beef as cheaply as possible in feedlots so that we can sell steaks for $5 a pound, to grow farm salmon that we know is not sustainable because it's just too hard to explain to our customers why wild salmon is better and worth a premium. We need to explain our role is not simply to sell food as merchant traders that make a buck off of each transaction. Our role is to sell food knowledgeably to customers and to teach customers and to explain to customers why spending 10 cents more on a zucchini from a guy like Lyle makes sense and to turn our customers on to better tasting fruit. Here's another one that I have for all the retailers out there. Go through and taste all of your fruit in every store every day and rate it. And rate it not on how good it is, but on how good it can be. And stuff that's great, give it 5 stars. And stuff that's lousy, give it none. But guide the customers into the things that are seasonal, that are good. Your customers will love you for it. But most of all, for me, for you, for the retailers, for everybody, we need to engage our farmers. We need to encourage them to take chances on improving the food that we eat, making sure that they know that we're behind them. Otherwise, one day, they won't be there. But the good news is they still are. In fact, all the folks that I talked about today, last Friday night I had an idea. I said, hey, would you be willing to come in and come up on the stage with me so that the folks here could show the appreciation for all the work and effort that you guys have put forth. Yeah, if only they were here. Okay, here they are, come on. Keep going a little bit further. Thanks, Joanne.
Good.
Thanks. Okay, thanks. Okay. Guys, hang on. I want to just introduce everybody to you. This, you saw the picture of him. This is Sandy Lewis from upstate New York, AKA Cow Whisperer. This is Paulette Satter from Satter Farms, who's Eberhard's wife, who I didn't mention. When we first tried launching our local program 8 years ago, I went out to Long Island to get all of these farmers to work with, expecting big embraces from them. Not only did they not want to work with me, they didn't even want to talk to me because I was a retailer. So I got Paulette to spend weeks with me going from farm to farm to vouch for me because her they trusted. So thank you, Paulette. Eberhard Mueller, 4-star chef turned farmer. Milas Russell from Sandstone Melons. And Diana Russell from Sandstone. And last but not least, Lyle Wells, the guy who next year will not lose money. And my name is David McInerney, and I am a fan of the farmer. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.